On June 12, 2025, Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, prepared for its journey from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick. The flight was part of Air India's daily international schedule, connecting families, business travelers, and tourists between two major cities. The aircraft, gleaming in the early morning light, was considered one of the safest and most advanced in the skies. On board were 230 passengers and 12 crew members, each with their own stories and destinations, all expecting a routine journey. The cabin buzzed with the usual pre-flight excitement, some passengers settling in for sleep, others chatting or scrolling through their phones, while the crew performed final safety checks. The morning was clear, visibility was excellent, and all systems were go as the plane lifted smoothly from runway 23. In the cockpit, the pilots exchanged routine communications with air traffic control, confident in the aircraft's performance. But just seconds after takeoff, disaster struck. Both engines suddenly lost power, an almost unheard-of event in modern aviation. Warning alarms blared in the cockpit, and the pilots fought desperately to regain control. The aircraft, unable to maintain altitude, stalled and plunged less than a mile from the runway. It crashed into a hostel near BJ Medical College, shattering the early morning calm and sending shockwaves through the city. The impact triggered a massive fire, with flames quickly engulfing the aircraft and spreading to nearby buildings. Thick black smoke billowed into the sky as firefighters raced to the scene, battling intense heat and dangerous conditions. Only one passenger miraculously survived the inferno. The other 241 people on board, along with 19 people on the ground, lost their lives in the tragedy. The scale of loss was almost unimaginable. In total, 260 lives were lost in an instant, leaving families and communities devastated. Vigils and memorials sprang up across India and the UK as the world mourned. Emergency services rushed in, but the raging fire and wreckage made rescue efforts nearly impossible. First responders could do little but contain the blaze and search for survivors. The tragedy sent shockwaves through India, the UK, and the global aviation community. News of the crash dominated headlines, and questions began to swirl about how such a disaster could happen. The Boeing 787 is renowned for its cutting-edge technology and safety features. How could it fail so catastrophically and so suddenly, just after takeoff? The world demanded answers. How did a state-of-the-art jet, flown by experienced pilots, fall from the sky moments after takeoff? Aviation authorities launched a full-scale investigation. The search for the cause began immediately, with investigators combing through the wreckage for clues and recovering the aircraft's black boxes. The investigation would uncover a mystery that would haunt aviation for years, challenging assumptions about technology, safety, and the unexpected risks that can still threaten even the most advanced aircraft. Investigators painstakingly reconstructed the final moments of Flight 171, piecing together the sequence of events from the flight recorders. Every second was analyzed, every sound and switch movement scrutinized, as the team worked to understand what led to the disaster. At precisely August 7, 33 UTC, the crew received takeoff clearance from air traffic control. The pilots acknowledged, their voices calm and routine, unaware of the tragedy that would soon unfold. The Dreamliner accelerated smoothly down the runway, lifted off gracefully, and began its initial climb into the morning sky, engines roaring with power and promise. But at August 8:42, something inexplicable happened. The fuel cutoff switch for engine 1 was suddenly moved to cutoff, an action that would immediately starve the engine of fuel. Then, in a moment of confusion or error, just 1 second later, the same was done to engine 2. Instantly, both engines lost power. The cockpit was filled with warning alarms and flashing lights, signaling a catastrophic loss of thrust. The ram air turbine, or RAT, deployed automatically, a last-ditch system designed to provide emergency power to critical flight controls and instruments. The pilots, stunned and desperate, scrambled to restart the engines, returning both switches to run within seconds, hoping to regain power before it was too late. At September 5, 08, a frantic Mayday call was transmitted. the crew's voices betraying their shock and urgency as they pleaded for help. But with the aircraft at low altitude and almost no time to react, recovery was impossible. The situation was now beyond saving. The aircraft crashed just 5 seconds later, nearly wings level, leaving a trail of devastation and heartbreak in its wake. The entire disaster, from the first sign of trouble to the final impact, unfolded in less than 30 seconds, a timeline of tragedy that stunned investigators and the world. Now, the cause of the dual-engine shutdown was the central mystery. Investigators were determined to uncover the truth behind this unprecedented failure, hoping to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. The loss of 260 lives shattered families and communities across India, the UK, and beyond. Passengers included families, business travelers, students, and expatriates, each with their own story. Among them were 53 British nationals and 12 dedicated Air India crew. 19 people on the ground, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, also lost their lives. The crash site became a scene of heartbreak and mourning for Ahmedabad. Amid the devastation, one passenger was miraculously pulled from the wreckage, gravely injured but alive. Their survival offered a glimmer of hope, but for most families, there was only grief. The tragedy's scale was almost unimaginable. The world mourned and demanded answers. The AAIB's preliminary report zeroed in on the most baffling fact. Both engines lost power because their fuel supply was deliberately cut off. The fuel control switches were moved from run to cut-off, one after the other, not simultaneously. These switches are protected by locking mechanisms and require a deliberate action to move. Accidental activation is nearly impossible, especially in sequence. The data showed a methodical, not random shutdown. The Ram air turbine's deployment confirmed total engine failure. Investigators were left with a chilling question. Why would anyone cut fuel to both engines right after takeoff? The what was clear. The why was a disturbing mystery. The investigation would have to dig deeper into both human and mechanical factors. The cockpit voice recorder revealed a chilling exchange. After the engines lost power, Captain Sumit Sabharwal asked First Officer Clive Kunder why he'd cut the fuel. Kunder insisted he hadn't touched the switches. Both pilots seemed genuinely confused, neither admitting to the action that doomed the flight. Was one lying? Were they disoriented? Or could a system fault have moved the switches? The Federation of Indian Pilots urged caution, warning against premature blame. The cockpit conversation remains a haunting puzzle. Two experienced aviators, bewildered by an inexplicable failure. The truth behind their confusion would become a central focus of the investigation. Captain Sumit Sabharwal, 56, was a veteran with over 15,000 flight hours, 8,600 on the 787. First Officer Clive Kunder, 32, was experienced and respected with over 3,400 hours. Both had passed all medical and pre-flight checks. The aircraft, Vermont ANB, was airworthy, with no major maintenance issues or reported defects in the fuel control system. The throttle control module had been replaced twice, but not for fuel switch problems. Maintenance logs showed nothing unusual since the last replacement. On paper, both crew and aircraft were in top condition. The mystery deepened. How could such a well-prepared flight end in disaster? Investigators would have to look beyond the obvious. Investigators uncovered a relevant history. In 2018, the FAA issued a special airworthiness information bulletin about the fuel control switches on Boeing jets. The bulletin warned that the locking mechanism could, in rare cases, become disengaged, making accidental movement possible. The switches require a pull to unlock action, but wear or other factors could compromise this safety feature. The FAA did not mandate repairs, only recommended inspections. No issues had been reported on VT-ANB, but the known vulnerability became a key focus. Did a latent defect allow the switches to move without pilot intent? Investigators would need to determine if this rare flaw played a role in the crash. The answer could reshape aviation safety standards. In the critical seconds after both engines suddenly shut down, the flight crew sprang into action, their training and instincts kicking in immediately. Every moment counted, and the pressure in the cockpit was immense. They quickly moved the fuel switches back to run, following emergency procedures to try and restart the engines. The pilots worked together seamlessly, communicating clearly and checking each step as they fought to regain power. Engine 1 began to show faint signs of recovery, its instruments flickering with hope. But Engine 2 stubbornly lagged behind, refusing to respond. At such a dangerously low altitude and with airspeed dropping, even a successful restart of just one engine might not have been enough to save the flight from disaster. The aircraft was already configured for landing, with flaps and gear extended, creating enormous drag and causing it to lose altitude at an alarming rate. The entire sequence, from the initial power loss to the moment of impact, unfolded in less than 30 seconds, leaving almost no margin for error or recovery. The pilots remained focused and determined under extreme stress, working as a team and exhausting every possible option in the face of overwhelming odds. Their actions were correct and by the book, but with so little time and altitude left, there was simply no way to recover. The tragedy became unavoidable the moment both engines lost power, sealing the fate of the flight despite the crew's best efforts. In the end, the crew's final efforts stood as a testament to their professionalism, courage, and dedication, even in the face of impossible odds. The world is left with a single haunting question. Why were both fuel cutoff switches moved during takeoff? The AAIB, with help from international experts, is investigating every angle. Mechanical failure, human error, or something more sinister. Investigators are examining the cockpit switches, searching for evidence of a mechanical flaw. Human factors experts are analyzing the pilot's actions and psychological state. The CVR's puzzling conversation is under intense scrutiny. The investigation will take months, maybe years, to reach a final conclusion. For the families, the wait for answers is agonizing, but only the truth can bring closure and prevent future tragedies. The legacy of Flight 171 will be the lessons learned from its loss.